Hello, I'm Nayeli Mendez Cervantes. I did my book review on the ozone layer from discovery to recovery. The author is Guy P. Brasser. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Guy, so I will be calling him Guy. The book was published by American Meteorological Society in 2020. Guy is the editor in chief of the Journal of Geophysical Research. I think he also works with NASA. So a little background on him. What I like about his book is that he went straight to the point pretty much at the beginning. He explained what the ozone layer is, the importance of it, negative effects of it, and how it was discovered, and how that knowledge changed over time. Regarding like researchers, scientists, and like the methods used to investigate the ozone layer. So the ozone layer is 6 to 31 miles in altitude in the stratosphere. It protects all life forms from the ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Um, this radiation is harmful to all living organisms. The effects of it can go anywhere from destruction of DNA to different skin cancers. And the ozone layer itself isn't the problem, that's the layer that protects us from that. But the issue arises when a hole is formed in the ozone layer because then that radiation penetrates right through the hole and it onto us completely. So these holes result from human activity, from emissions of chlorofluorocarbons, from industrial applications, other pollution that's man-made. The main objectives of his book was to describe and inform on the discovery of the ozone layer. So, how it was discovered in 1839 by Christian Frederick Chauvian, basically by some odor that was produced in electrolysis of acidulated water during an experiment. He also happened to notice that this odor appeared often during thunderstorms. It even became known as the electric smell, but it was really just called the ozone smell. At the beginning, there was a misconception of what it was. They thought that ozone was chlorine or bromine or hydrogen peroxide. But in 1850, the laboratory measurements revealed it was only oxygen atoms. So a couple of theories he came up with was that the amount of ozone produced in an oxygen-containing enclosure was extremely low due to chemical destruction of an unknown substance, which would reduce the rate formation of ozone. The second theory was that ozone appeared when electrified gas is when it was just made of pure oxygen. Like that was it. Like it's just pure oxygen. That was the explanation. Some researchers at the time, Marie Alfred Cornrue in 1879, was a professor at the university in Paris, and she made an important discovery. She discovered that radiation wavelengths shorter than 293 millionths could not reach Earth's surface, but there was no explanation available at the time. In 1881, chemist Sir Walter Hartley provided an explanation on Marie's discovery. His explanation was that ozone absorbs ultraviolet radiation at wavelengths shorter than 285 millionths. Some theories that were covered in this book were the first mathematical model of stratospheric ozone developed by Chapman, and it was introduced at the Paris Conference in 1929. This theory explained the existence of the ozone in upper layers of the atmosphere. It implied that ozone produced in ultraviolet radiation is more abundant in areas most illuminated by the sun, so like the tropical areas. This theory did not match the measurements of the ozone, so it was inaccurate. In 1931, Reinhard Mech, a professor of physics and chemistry, attempted to calculate ozone concentration as a function of pressure using Chapman's theory and model. His result was also inaccurate. Lola Deming was a mathematician in 1943, and she also attempted to calculate the vertical distribution of ozone using Chapman's model as well, but it integrated a balloon measurement. Once again, there was a miscalculation due to the number of quanta absorbed in atmosphere by molecular oxygen and ozone as a function of height. It was not accurate because these two variables had never been measured together before. And that was one of the main problems during those times, that there was only one framework to deal with, and that was Chapman's, and you're not going to get an accurate result using the wrong formula or equation. So some human activity that made the ozone layer worse. Water vapor released from aircraft engines, which altered and caused some destruction in the ozone layer. And this was during President Richard Nixon's administration. In the 1960s, James McDonald, a professor at the University of Arizona, suggested that UFOs were a fierce enemy of humans and caused damage to the ozone layer, which I don't know why that was brought into the book, but yeah, they mentioned UFOs, how their aircrafts could potentially be hurting the ozone layer as well. Some aircrafts releasing nitrogen oxide allowed solar radiation to penetrate deeply into the lower atmosphere, which caused dangerous health effects. I believe that Guy's book did complete his objectives. He did mention, he really did break down every aspect of the discovery of the ozone layer to recovering it. There's way too many concepts, everything was just sub idea, so I wouldn't be able to fit everything in there. There was over 33 researchers in the book, so I couldn't cover all of those. What worked though was all the small findings that they did, or even the errors. It helped them move forward in learning about the ozone layer. What didn't work well, as I mentioned a little earlier, was that for a long time scientists only had one model available to use in attempting to calculate the ozone, which resulted in miscalculations every time because they were only going off of one model that was wrong to begin with. Some major themes in the book was just a lot of trial and error due to all the information being new, and many scientists taking a different approach at it. They didn't have the technology that we have now, so it made things a lot more complicated as well. The book was intended, the audience was supposed to be non-experts on science subjects, just like the general public, who were just interested in science. But I think this book was a big challenge. It has a lot of scientific language, scientific explanations that are really long, and even though I researched about it, it was just really long and it was hard to understand. So I don't know that I would say it's for the general public. I would say maybe someone who already has an idea of what the ozone layer stuff is and scientific knowledge, because I don't think it's easy for just the general public to read. The author did reinforce that how complicated the process was. I didn't realize how many concepts were discovered. I thought it was gonna be, I don't know, I guess bigger concepts instead of every little thing was a concept, whether it was wrong or accurate, it was still mentioned. So they broke everything down. And also just how hard it was to keep track of the scientists who discovered things or who made the error, all the conferences held. So that just kind of reinforced how difficult it was. I don't think I would recommend the book just because, I mean, it does explain the process over the years, but like I said, it gets complicated. Um, but I would recommend it to someone who has background knowledge in a lot of science, like the astrological kind of stuff. I would recommend it. I would think that they would know how to understand the book better. I learned that chlorine oxide in the atmosphere is where ozone has disappeared. Like there's a hole there now. There's an ozone hole in Antarctica, which I wasn't aware of that. Overall, this book is very in depth, and like I said, it has extreme scientific language. It's a little difficult to keep track of the concepts, the time frames, and the scientists because there's so many of them. But I think it would be good for someone who has scientific knowledge to read it. I think they would get a lot out of it. So yeah, that is all. Thank you.